Well, welcome along to episode 11 of Sweet Tea and Coffee. We've been talking about this for the last few episodes and asking you to send in your questions that you want us to answer. And you've done that. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. We've got some questions, and I'm just going to tell you they are all over the map.
All over the place.
We've got a giant list of them here, and I don't think we're going to be able to get through them all in one sitting, because who knows where this
unless
is
we're
going to
just
go.
Like amazing and we can just knock them out one by one. But looking at them, I feel like there's some conversation.
There's some conversation. So we're going to do our best today to get through a group of them, but thanks for sending them in. So we're going to answer your questions today on the episode. Stick around. Okay, so as I said, we're going to get into the questions that you have sent in. And I've got them all sitting in front of me here and kind of scanning through them. And there's been one that every time we've gone over these questions, there's been one that kind of surprisingly has put a smile on Blake's face when we ask it. And he's got something up his sleeve. And
I'm wondering which one that is.
Well,
when have I smiled? I try not to smile.
Admittedly, it's also one I've struggled with tremendously. So I'm going to just go ahead and jump out there and actually ask the question, and hopefully while you're answering, something comes to me. But I thought this was pretty funny. The show is named Sweet Tea and Coffee. And so somebody asked, do you have a story about the best glass of sweet tea or cup of coffee you've ever had? Now, this is one of those questions because I'm a rule follower. I like to know the parameters and the rules.
And I like to just make up my own
and you like to
parameters
just yeah, you just make up your own rules. What are we talking about, Blake, when we say the best glass? Is it the contents of the glass? So
we're going to get real specific.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out, as you hear that question,
okay, well, now,
what do you hear?
Now that you said that, I have something else to add to it. I just added to my
What is it? Give me
responses.
give me the borders of this question so we can answer. I want you to answer it first, but what are we talking about here?
I think it could be anything you want it to be. If it's like your favorite coffee mug, then fine. If you want to get real specific on the best glass of coffee or cup of coffee that
you are so postmodern in your response. It can be whatever you want it to be. You can be whatever you want.
Yeah, because now I feel like I'm going to go every direction I possibly can with this.
Well, why don't you take that then? What do you have a story about the best glass of sweet tea or the cup of or a cup of coffee?
Well, it's not coffee.
Can I just ask you this? Have you ever had a cup of coffee?
I don't think I've finished one. I have started.
Tell me that story first. What was your first introduction to coffee?
I remember, my parents are big coffee drinkers. And
are they really?
Yeah, they've always, they have to have their coffee in the morning. And I remember, like, as a kid, like, picking up my mom's cup of coffee on the counter in the kitchen and be like, I'm going to try this. And trying it and be like, oh, this is like burnt water. Like, it tastes awful. And I've had that same experience over and over again.
So you did
times.
Try it again after being
yeah.
a kid.
I've tried. Ashley, she drinks coffee, so occasionally I'll try to drink.
Is that on the record? I think that's on the record that you are married to a coffee drinker.
Yeah, she enjoys.
How does she drink her coffee? Does she drink it black, or is it?
No.
It's all fixed up.
No, it's a special creamer that I have to go find at Walmart. I know. I don't even remember what it's called, but I know what the bottle looks like, and that's what she pours in there. So.
Would you guess at a percentage of that cup of coffee of how much is actually coffee and how much is that creamer? Is it a half and half kind of thing? Or is
it may not be that much, but it's probably not far off.
Okay. I always wonder with people like that, we're not throwing Ashley under the bus here.
No, it's okay.
Is it fair to call those people coffee drinkers?
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
It's still, for me, I think, it still has that. I've tried to put like 3/4 creamer and 1/4 coffee.
And it still doesn't work.
So it's still got that taste to it. I can't do it.
I don't know. I just think there's some coffee snobs out there that might frown.
Oh, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
Absolutely.
All right, best cup.
Okay. So I don't know if I have like a best glass of tea, but I have some memorable ones.
Okay.
And I'm going to share these stories, and people maybe they'll relate. So when I was younger, where you went to get tea was Chicken Express. Like,
for sure.
That was where you wanted sweet tea, and it was pretty cheap at the time. I remember you could get it for like under $1 or something for a giant cup of sweet tea. But I remember there was a point, I think I was just getting older, or I don't know what it was, but I was drinking it. It was just too strong. Like, I couldn't take it anymore. And it was like, it was kind of sad. It was a sad moment. But I remember I was working in another church, and I remember getting a glass or a cup of sweet tea from Chicken Express and just start drinking on it. And I was at the church, and I was like, oh, this doesn't feel good.
I don't feel good.
My chest is hurting. And like, I just couldn't function. And I only drinking like half of it. And I remember we were like in this fellowship hall area, and they had a pool table in there. And I remember just getting on top of the pool table and just laying down and like just taking deep breaths for a little while. I mean, it took me like 15 minutes.
It really took you down.
Yeah. Like it was, so I can't do Chicken Express tea anymore.
That was it. You just cut it off after that.
I have tried a few times. And then
Did you wind up on the pool table?
That same feeling starts to come back. And I'm like, no, we're not going down that road again. So that was a memorable tea. Currently, one of the most interesting places to get tea, and I'm going to tell people who are tea connoisseurs where to go get their tea around town. But the Tome Express over
Watch out.
By Lowe's, they have a vanilla sweet tea. Now, you got to be careful because it's pretty strong, and it's borderline Chicken Express as far as sweetener. But it's in a smaller bottle. If I take my time with it, it doesn't hurt me as bad. But the vanilla is fun. It's a great idea. It's fantastic. So that's a memorable tea. And if we're going to go about cups, like what's your favorite glass of sweet tea, like your physical glass, if you go to Good Bites, they give you a massive... If you order sweet tea, they give you a massive cup, like massive glass of tea.
It's not fair to call it a cup. What they give you there is are you sure it's a glass or is it
I don't know what.
It's got a handle.
It's heavy. You've got to have some arm strength to pick it up.
That's right.
So I recommend if you want a big honking glass of sweet tea, go to Good Bites and they'll get you hooked up. So those are my best glasses of sweet tea.
It's
not answering the question really at all, but
yeah, I appreciate how you did that. How you just
danced around it.
Took a question and didn't answer it. But I think it's a good time to mention that this podcast is currently not sponsored.
I know. I feel like it needs to be. But
well, we're open to that.
Yeah,
if you're listening and you want us to slap a little advertising on there, we are.
Maybe we get a tip jar or something.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So
a tip jar. For some reason, we are Good Bites. Our staff is pretty committed to making
Matt's
sure
going to keep it open.
That new place makes it.
Yeah.
And
Matt Murray is a fan. Maybe next time we have him on, we'll ask him about his favorite Good Bites meal. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you not answering.
Yeah. So
the question.
So what's your coffee? Your favorite cup of coffee, if you've ever had? Do you have one of those?
I find these questions incredibly difficult.
Y'all can't see
answer.
this, but Kendall just like looked at me like, no, I don't have an answer.
It's just too. I'll tell you this. I'm going to go too sappy on this, I guess. But I think the thing that I have enjoyed, my favorite cup of coffee, is when I get to share a cup of coffee with people that are really special to me. And I think about the relationship side of it. Man, I've had a lot of really incredible conversations and hard conversations and everything else over cups of coffee. And so I think that's been, I always really enjoy those moments. I think about one thing that I really think about a lot is my mom and her mom. That was a thing that they did.
Yeah.
Is that especially as my mom started having kids and family, whatever, anytime that they were with one another, it was this really sacred time that they had, that they would always get up and they would have their coffee together.
Right. Yeah.
And so I've really enjoyed times where when my parents are maybe visiting or we're there, I really enjoy those. And it doesn't happen every time, especially with kids, getting up and running around. I've enjoyed being able to sit down and have a cup of coffee with my mom, who I know did that with her mom, and so there's something there, and something. This is way cool, but we actually have a coffee mug that was my grandmother's, and so when I use that mug at the house, I don't use it all the time. It's kind of because it's a special thing, you know. I have my coffee mug that I use every day, basically, but then when you use this one, it's kind of like I always think about the conversations that have happened over the years, the conversations I haven't been involved in, but just in our family over cups of coffee. So I don't know. I think more about the relationship side of it, about people, and I don't know that I could say the best. Now in town, oh man, I'm not going to get into that. I don't know.
You may hurt some feelings.
Yeah, I don't want to hurt any feelings, but I don't like bitter coffee, and if I can taste that at all, man, I'm not a fan, and there's a few places in town that kind of lean that way, and so I kind of try to avoid. But yeah, that's my.
You know, we started talking about coffee mugs and cups and things like that, and for me it begs the question, like, what does your coffee mug, your favorite mug, say about you?
I don't know.
You know,
it's because I use the same one over and over and over again. I think that probably says something.
I was just
about
thinking back. You were talking about your mom and your grandma, and I was thinking about because my grandmother, she is a big coffee drinker, and I remember as a kid, like, she had very prim and proper coffee cups, like almost like little teacups. And I mean, it was like blue willow, and so she would like have the little saucer that it would sit on. I remember her sitting on her porch with that, you know, holding that saucer
exact
with
same with my grandmother,
the cup, you know. And it's interesting because you don't really see that anymore. And then I think about like John James floating around here with like his Star Wars mug, you know, like you see that mug, you're like, that's John's mug, you know, so it kind of says something he's interested in.
Yeah. I don't try to make any statements with my coffee mug. I don't think you could look at it and see anything. Yeah. The coffee mugs. And this one, and the one I use for tea at work is just whatever. But the one I actually drink coffee from every morning, we have these. They're green, and we used to probably have 5 of them. We got them when we were first married, and over the years they've, you know, dropped and broken or whatever. Right. I mean, you know how dishes go. And actually, this is a big deal. I'm glad you brought this up. It was probably a month ago. We were down to 2, and both have some chips and, you know, but those are my mugs.
Right.
And I like these coffee mugs, not because of what they say about me, whatever. I like that they balance the weight of the coffee perfectly. So if I can drive down the road with a full cup of coffee and it not be bouncing all over the place, and I don't get super fatigued and like have to pay too much attention, you know, watching it, then it's a good coffee mug. And I have not found one that equals the perfect balance of these mugs. So anyway, we're down to 2, and I'm having a conversation with my dad on the phone, walking out from work, and I had all this stuff, and I set the coffee mug, kind of propped it on my gym bag as I opened the door, and I bumped that bag, and it was the saddest thing in the world as this mug just went down to the asphalt floor and shattered. So I'm down to 1. And Lindsay assures me that we can find more of these, but I can't. I don't think I could do a new one. I think if the last one goes, it's just rest in peace. It's just over. I've got to turn a page. So this is pretty serious.
Yeah, you know, people are serious about their coffee mugs.
They are.
I mean, they get protective of them. I was watching The Office the other night. 'Cause I mean, that's what you do. I know I can apply most situations in life to an episode of The Office, and one of them was they had the coffee mugs with their faces on them, and Jim, one of the characters in the show, was using one with Andy's face on it. Andy walks in and goes, "That's my mug." And Jim kind of looks at the picture and is like, "Oh yeah, it's your mug."
But he doesn't care, but Andy goes, really cares.
No, but that's my mug. I need you to pour that coffee out. That's my mug. And he was like, "Are you serious?" He's like, "Yeah," you know. But I mean, people get serious about.
They get serious about it. Yeah. If you were at my house and see, now we have one, and I've got to. Sometimes it's not available, that's becoming kind of a problem. I look in there, and when it's not available, it's in the dishwasher or whatever. It's a little frustrating. But if you were drinking coffee out of that mug and it was available, and I was using something else, I don't know that I would take it from you, but I might think about
Yeah,
it.
it might be hard to focus.
It would be hard
Like,
for me.
It's my mug. I need that mug.
That's my mug. That's my mug. So I'm down to one, friends. I'm down to one. And yeah, but that's how I judge a coffee mug is based on balance. All right, here's another one that.
Yeah, I think we answered that question sufficiently well, right?
Goodness gracious. Yeah, people are like, move on. We just lost half of our. We built up this audience with all these great guests, and then they listen to this one, and they're like, "Man, I'm never listening to these guys
topics.
again." That's right. Yeah, it's your questions. That's right. Okay, if you could have a superpower,
Oh gosh,
you're the only one that's going to answer this. This is another question I can't answer. I have no idea how to answer it. But if you could have a superpower, have you thought about this one?
Just briefly.
Okay,
Just
do you have an answer?
Yeah, I would probably be invisible. And I don't know if there's much needs to be said about that.
No explanation needed. No, in fact, I think you should start new relationships by telling people that.
Yeah, I'd just be invisible.
Listen, just so you know, if you're going to be friends with me, know that if I could have a superpower, it would be invisible.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to see me.
That's right. I love that. Yeah, so. Hey, as an introvert, I think I would gravitate to that a little bit. I don't know what kind of superpower I would have. It's just, there are people that think through this question.
Oh, yeah.
They have a dialed in answer. And I'm paranoid about answering this question because I don't want to say something flippantly.
Right.
And then it just be absolutely ridiculous. But then also I kind of think, just answer the question. I don't.
Yeah, I feel like there should be some sort of superpower that helps out with making these decisions.
That's it. Not overthinking things. If I could have a superpower, I would have the ability to catch myself overthinking things and stop it. There you go.
It's good.
Is that okay?
Yeah, it's great.
I would correct personality defects with my superpower. Okay, I like this one. It was about. I'm going to combine two questions, so forgive me if these are. If you asked both of these and you had different things in mind, sorry, but I want to combine them. One of them just talks about favorite books, genres, authors, etc. And then another question says, besides the Bible, which books have been most influential in the building of your theology? So I think that's a little bit more specific, but maybe combine those questions. I don't know which way you want to go with that. If you want to just talk about favorite books, I know you're really big into audiobooks right now.
Yeah, I listen to a lot of audio.
And you do a lot of history books.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a genre, but I don't know. Do you have a favorite genre? And then have there been books that really stand out as influential in your theology or favorite authors or anything like that? Anything to jump in there?
I think so. So as far as like favorite books and genres, the first question, you hit on it. Like I'm huge in history books. I love history. I've always loved history my entire life. And so I like to learn. I like to learn more about things that I don't know about.
Why did you not major in history?
I thought about it.
You went the
what am I going to do
political
with that?
Science route.
Well, yeah. I don't know what I was going to do with that.
Okay.
That was just, it was just.
I just think like
it was a tough time for me.
They make a degree that is just studying the things you like to study.
And I took some history classes and enjoyed them.
Have you ever thought about auditing history classes at SFA or something?
No, I haven't. But
until now,
probably should.
There you go.
But my favorite era of history would be World War II. Like I like a lot of. Right now, I'm listening to a Battle of Gettysburg book. But World War II is probably my favorite. And then the guy that wrote Band of Brothers, one of my favorite books and stories of all time, Stephen Ambrose. He's written a lot of books, history books, and centered around World War II and different troops there and citizen soldiers, just different things like that. I really enjoy those. So that would be like the genre and author probably that I would choose.
Can I ask you a question off of that?
Yeah.
I think so. I'm not that way. Now I do like history, but I don't not to the degree that you do. My dad kind of is really interested in different portions of war history.
Right.
But it seems to me that there are people that in that category gravitate to certain time periods.
Yeah. And
you have some people that, when you start talking about history in that category, they gravitate more to Civil War era and they want to talk about that. You have, you just mentioned World War II and that era. What do you think is it that attracts you to that specific era, or others different things? I mean, what?
Yeah, it's interesting because I do go through phases where I'll get stuck in one era for a little while. Like right now, is Civil War. Like I've been doing a lot of reading and watching YouTube videos and documentaries on the Civil War. But like if it was an overarching, like this one's more constant, it would be World War II.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's recent enough to be kind of, there's still a lot of information out there on it. My grandfather fought in World War II. And so
okay.
I remember as a kid, like seeing some of the things that he brought back from World War II and kind of being in it. I mean, I have his photo of in his uniform and all that. And so I think that's probably part of it, is that connection to, I've spent significant time like searching through records, trying to find different things related to his group, which I don't know a whole lot. We didn't learn a whole lot about his time in service when he was alive. And so a lot of times I'll try to be connecting the dots of, when he was in service and what battles were going on and, what would his outfit have been in this theater kind of deal. And so that's probably where I kind of trace back. But I've always liked aviation, and that's when like that really kind of started to become tactical and useful. I used it some in World War I, but World War II is like the technology improved so much, and so old war planes are interesting to me too. So that's probably where it would come from, if I had to say.
How did the audiobook thing start? Just more, you could get more in. And
yeah, just spending time on the mower or in the truck, I could listen to something and take in a lot of information. Ashley kind of started the audiobook thing with our kids. We had got Audible, and so she was getting books for our kids to listen to, and she was listening to them occasionally. And I was like, well, we're paying for the subscription. Maybe I'll download a book and try it. And I love it. I will. A 30-hour book is nothing for me.
Goodness gracious.
Like I actually look, because we get like a free credit every month, and so I want to make use of that credit really good, and I want to try to stretch it the entire month. I rarely ever make it. Usually I get about 3/4 of the way through the month, and I'm finished the book. But so I'll look for like a book that has the highest hour count that I possibly can. But you got to be careful, because sometimes you get some guys that are readers that are just terrible, and so I like listen to the samples and make sure I can handle the guy for 30 hours. And, or even the writer, sometimes the way he writes can be frustrating. So
it doesn't translate well to an audiobook.
It's just kind of wearing on you or boring, And everybody's like, well, it's a 30-hour history book. It's probably boring. Well, no, it's not. I enjoyed a lot. There's a lot of leadership lessons in these books. I mean, if you examine history, you learn a lot about what it means to lead. And so that's kind of a draw.
Oh, there's a little nugget. Examine history, you learn a lot about leadership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can find those lessons in these books. I mean, even like this Gettysburg one right now, all these different leaders that were on either side. It's like you can really look at where they did good and where they totally screwed up, and so it's just really neat to analyze that and kind of see the circumstance of what was going on around them.
What about books that have been most influential in the building of your theology?
Yeah, that's interesting. It's hard to put my finger on one. I can think of ones that were influential in, like development of my ministry of like worship leading, because there's a lot of them out there for that. Theology, it's like a lot of that is central around Scripture, and then kind of just a peripheral books that kind of add towards that.
But to be fair, the question says besides the Bible.
Yeah, right. So I don't want to say that, but if I were to say, I could say something about like worship ministry. There was a book that I actually just gave to my armor bearers yesterday called Worship Matters by Bob Coughlin. And that's a book that if you asked any worship leader on the street, the street that all the worship leaders are walking down, if you just grabbed one of them and said, what's an influential book? What's like a book that you'd recommend to every worship leader? That would be the one, Worship Matters. So I'm not going to like give a plot outline to it or anything. I mean,
but it's a good book.
It's a good book.
And it's influenced you.
Yeah.
In your ministry. Less so in your theology.
Yeah.
Or maybe in your theology of worship.
I mean, yeah, absolutely in the theology of worship. And I think for me, it's not a practical, like, this is how you lead worship. So I think that maybe it is more of theology book because it places a lot of emphasis on the importance of doctrine and theology and the way that you pastor and lead. So yeah, in a roundabout way, it's probably one of them. You got something?
Yeah. Favorite books, genres, authors. In terms of genre, I don't know that I could answer that question well. I kind of float around. I am fascinated by the topic of spiritual formation and just how we know the Lord, how we hear his voice, the inner workings of that relationship and how to make that practical for people. Mm-hmm. And so that whole concept of spiritual formation and kind of anything in that category, I love. I love reading. But some of the books that have been most influential, I'm going to kind of take that a little bit like what you did, but I'm going to split it in two parts. So most influential in my theology, I would say most recently it's been the work of N.T. Wright. And
he's got some good stuff.
Not necessarily one book.
Right.
I've read a lot of his stuff lately and listened to him quite a bit. And I think the thing that he's helped me to do is, and it's funny because it's going to relate to some things we're going to be talking about coming up, but I think he has really helped me. He's a historian. He New Testament scholar, has tons of great insight on first century world, and it's really helped me, I think, connect the big picture of Scripture, and that's so his work, I think, is fantastic. I'd recommend anybody to read any of his stuff. I thought his not most recent, but almost most recent book on Paul. It's called Paul, a Biography. It's a big read.
I've seen that.
But it's one of the best things I've ever read that connects the dots for all of Paul's life and journey and what he might have been thinking. He kind of fills in some of the gaps and he's really clear about where he's making some assumptions, but he does that based on a first century Jewish context. And it's just fascinating. So, and it reads really well. I think it just reads really, really, really smoothly.
I mean, that's the trick with some of those types of books is like, do I have to read this page 6 times before it kind of sinks in,
Yeah. So he's been fantastic. And then early on and still, A.W. Tozer's work has been really, really important in terms of the development of my theology. And I could name more. Some of the people that, in terms of spiritual formation, some of the books that have really helped in ministry, have been things from, N.T. Wright for sure, still in that area, more in a theological perspective, but Dallas Willard's work, I think, is really, there's certain pockets of people that have heard of him and have gotten into his work, but he has a tremendous amount. One of the books that I think is just really, really helpful, it's called Spirit of the Disciplines, and it's basically a theological framework for why spiritual disciplines and discipline in general is important and helpful in God doing what he wants to do in us. And I think those two dots being connected are really important. I think we talk about spiritual disciplines over here and we do it more of a checklist kind of thing, but what he's going to try to connect this to, and I think he does a good job in that book, is that this is very much connected to the fact that what God is doing is he is changing and redefining our character.
Yeah.
And that is why disciplines are. So that's a great book. And then one of the books that was really helpful to me in terms of just ministry formation was it's called The Pastor, a Memoir, and it's by Eugene Peterson, who, I think very much captures the essence of what a pastor, as I think of one, is. Yeah. He's very not this. Now he had a lot of fame, was really put on the scene with the message translation, but I think really pastored in the again in kind of the essence of what I think it means to be a pastor. And so it's really just him reflecting on that journey of how God called him into it and what some of his experiences were. He kind of gives you a window into his relationship with his wife and how that impacted ministry. And it was one of the things that as I read that book, somebody recommended it to me, and as I read that book, and I've loved any of Eugene Peterson's stuff, but that book in particular just kind of, it helped me to refine what I thought being a pastor really was and to help see myself as one.
Yeah.
Because I think if you ask somebody, well, what does it mean to be a pastor? You're going to get answers that are all over the map. And I think it helped me define what that looks like. And then also kind of go, okay, I think that's what God is asking me to step into. And I can imagine myself there just by hearing his stories.
I mean, I think he defines what being a pastor is by telling stories of what he's been through. And I think that kind of stuff is more impactful than just saying, here's a pastor, and you just bullet point it.
Yes.
And so, I mean, and that just goes back to the importance of us telling stories. And I think that really ministers to people.
Absolutely. So, and I would say that anybody who just loves a good story, Eugene Peterson is an incredible storyteller. Right. You don't have to want to be a pastor to read that book. It's a great book.
It would just be no matter what.
Very interesting no matter what, to get the inside look at a guy that just has contributed a lot. And so anyway, those are my favorite books. I think we're going to have to shut it down right there.
Yeah, that's
we're at time. But
we've still got some more. We may come back to this at a different time and hit some of them up.
Yeah, close with your first car.
My first car was a 93 Toyota truck. Not a Tacoma. They didn't call them that yet. They just called them trucks.
That's amazing.
And I still dream about that car.
We both had 93 Toyotas as our first car, but I was not in the truck category.
Yours was purple, wasn't it?
I was driving a purple Camry. I can't believe I just admitted that publicly. I was driving a purple Camry. All right, friends, that's a deep dive into books and cars and
superpowers,
mugs and superpowers. I hope that you're satisfied. You may never send us a question again, but we do want to hear from you. Anything you want us to talk about, not necessarily in a Q&A format, but topics, things. And then again, man, interesting people in our community that we need to talk to. If you've got any of those ideas, please send it in at stc@fredoniahill.org. We got a cheer going. Thanks so much for listening. We will see you next time. Adios.
Bye.